we pivot the direction of this project to be not about like how do we fast create these experiences, but actually turn it into something which is going to stick with the clients for a long period of time.
Hi, I'm Matt Egol, host of the CX and Culture Connection, the podcast for leaders looking to drive value by focusing on customer experience and culture together. I'm excited to talk today with Sujay Saha, the founder and president at Cortico-X, which partners with clients and tech companies to incubate and commercialize products, building on the consulting they do to accelerate digital change. Sujay and I were partners together at PwC, and I always really enjoyed teaming with Sujay and was really excited to see him become a partner together. And we wrote more than 5 articles together on something we created together called Return on Experience, which was a service offering to drive transformation by approaching customer, employee, and leadership experience together to create a virtuous cycle. It's great to have you on the podcast, Sujay.
Exciting to be here along with you, Matt. Love having conversations with you about our favorite topic.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to be teaming more together so we can share more with people about that on the podcast as well. But we go way back, and I'm excited to have a chance to work together on some things in the future as well. So what was your motivation to leave PwC? We both left and done other things. What was your own motivation to leave PwC and grow the business at Cortico-X?
I mean, as you know, Matt, I was having fun at PwC, and I know that both of us were having fun together, working with a lot of clients across industries, helping them in thinking through customer centricity agenda. How do you make it real? How do you help them in captivating the ROI? Some of the concepts that you talked about around return on experience being one of them. I was having fun. At the same time, call it my midlife crisis in some ways, that I started to think about entrepreneurial gigs and how life is short and we should try out other things. Plus, at the same time, kidding aside, I felt there was a dire need in the market to have organizations that help companies think through and navigate the changes in their organizations more through the lenses of driving human centricity. And it's almost like having conversations not just with people who have experienced digital or data in their titles, but how do you work with everybody else in the organization who do not have that in their titles? Because that's where the rubber hits the road. And as you know, Matt, through our experiences of working with multiple clients, like there are a lot of times people who have experience in digital in their titles, they would try to drive as much as possible the discipline within the organization, but there is so much that they can do in terms of influencing. A lot of work has to be done by folks who own the P&L, folks who own the channels, folks who are responsible for being on the front lines with the customers. And with those with that as the backdrop, I founded this company Cortico-X that essentially with the mission statement of what's best for people is what's best for an organization, and use that as an anchor point for us to define not only a service offering but our product offerings. The second part of it, Matt, is this what you call like the desire of productizing a lot of our services so that we can accelerate the change. That was one of the 2 primary reasons why I wanted to step out of PwC and start to think about like building a brand, building a company that helps organizations in driving certain things faster with products. And I felt like I would have a lot more autonomy to do that when I
100%. There's a lot of freedom in working where you can help do what's right for the client to drive innovation and productize things, do things faster, cheaper. I find in JourneySpark that like the work we used to do together we can now do for 1/3 the price by leveraging technology more effectively.
Yeah. And this exactly. And then the same thing around the value too, right? Like how do we accelerate the value with some of the work that we can do much faster? Completely agree.
Yeah. And what are some of the innovations that you've been most excited or proud that you've been able to develop with clients, leveraging this new model?
I would say like under the larger umbrella of productizing services, or call it like creating products, we are working with clients on putting together an experience-led strategic planning architecture for clients. A lot of times, like we would do, as you know, Matt, like a lot of pieces of work around looking at any business problem or opportunity through the lenses of people, but then it will turn into like a static roadmap. How do you turn that into like a dynamic roadmap? Because the fact of the matter is that within 3 months, any roadmap can be stale if not acted upon, and the situations change. So we decided to kind of productize that offering, and we have nicknamed that product to be called Renzo. And it's still in the incubation phases where we are working with a couple of clients to kind of putting that out there. But the idea is like, how do you use experience as like the key anchor in driving some of that? The second part is, I'd say much along the same lines, like how do we are not only, I would say, partnering, but we are creating some exclusive joint venture relationships with a couple of AI solutioning companies. The idea is, Matt, not just leaving the clients behind with here are the opportunities and the use cases to kind of tackle, but actually turn that into prototypes and solutions that people can touch and feel. And to do some of that, like that was probably what we would have wanted to do all of this like long time back, but technology was a limiter in certain ways. Now it is not. Now we can actually show some of these concepts in reality and sway the business cases to not be like those arduous steerco meetings where we are presenting the ROI of some of this, but actually taking the experience in hand to some of those meetings.
It's like I launched Booz Digital shortly before PwC with some partners. I was one of the co-founders of Booz Digital a few years before PwC acquired Booz. And then some of the first projects we worked on together at PwC, where we were doing agile prototyping and experience design work as part of a strategy. And so I think that that model, you've carried it forward of like being able to work with agility, to prototype things, to develop experience as a product, a digital product that creates scale, and it's not just a one-off solution.
That's exactly right. Yep.
Yeah.
You often actually refer to that, Matt, exactly what you just said.
Yeah. And, you and I wrote an article together with Matt Egol called Enterprise Agility and Experience Management Efforts Go Better Together, in which we talked about the work we were doing, helping drive agility into the organization. And really, this is the fusion of customer experience and culture, of helping the organization drive design thinking and agility and data science and have a more agile, iterative approach to building experiences. And you're taking that now into your own work at Cortico to actually build prototypes of things and not just help drive new ways of working at clients.
Yeah, that's well said, Matt. I completely agree.
And of course, that allows you to take advantage of some of the AI opportunities that are out there. Speaking of AI, one of the things that I've enjoyed doing recently, Sujay, is using AI not only to create insights, but to enable creating content, like through the eyes of your personas, and then to also drive like journey orchestration using the AI. What are your own thoughts on like what's real today and where do you think the puck's going?
I personally think like AI at this point in time, like it's accurate enough that there are a ton of possibilities across the board. A lot of times, the most intuitive opportunities seem to be more what I would call like customer facing. How do you drive rapid actions with customers, not just recommend next best actions for front office folks to kind of take with customers. But there are some what I'd call like the non-slick ways of leveraging AI as well. Literally yesterday, I was in a workshop with a life sciences client, and we were talking about data manipulation, because they were talking about like how data is so bad in certain circumstances that how would you even train the AI engine? And we steered the conversation in the direction of like how even if the data is bad, what would you do to kind of actually improve that data quality? And they talked about like we would almost need like uh, tens of interns to come in and take some of this data and just start to edit it so that we can actually do it in a meaningful way and fix that before we can apply the AI models on the top of it. And 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 we pushed the conversation in the direction that, hey, if there is anything that probably 100 interns can do, AI can do that at scale. So where I was going is like even some of the non-slick opportunities around data manipulation could also be accomplished through AI. So we a lot of times think like AI has to be applied on good data, but the data quality can be improved using AI.
Well, you and I pioneered some of the work together in like healthcare and financial services and retail, leveraging unstructured data. A lot of the different platforms have this now to mine unstructured data, and you can also work with the data in Snowflake and Azure and do it directly now in ChatGPT. There's a lot of things you can do directly to improve your data. For example, we did some work recently with a travel company where they had hundreds of thousands of records where the data was not very good, where people in the sales organization were entering records of calls they had, and the point here is you already have a record of the call. If you have a recording of the call, why do you need people to enter a summary of the call? That's bad data. Just use the AI to create the summary and have the people review it.
That's exactly right. And in fact, as you would agree, a lot of this is like turning into the next level where it's summarization of some of those things, some of those call notes in real time, but then also prompting the folks who are taking the call in real time around like what are some of the how to navigate some of the knowledge base so that you can change the experience of the customers in the moment. So there's definitely a ton of opportunities out there, and
do you mean like co-pilots?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that there's two areas that I find really exciting in addition to co-piloting, which I think is a really good use case. Anytime there's a frontline employee that you want to have them have an assisted experience with the customer, that clearly that works in banking and healthcare and a lot of more complex markets and B2B manufacturing and things like that, where there's a lot of expertise needed. Another use case I think that's really valuable, Sujay, is that you can develop personas mining all these conversations where it becomes not only a source of insights, but you can start mapping to your customers to personas based on the conversations that they have with your people. And once you've mapped people to personas, you can start tailoring the experience to them. So all these conversations are really, really valuable source of data now that are not being used fully. So I think that's one use case. And another one is training. Once you identify the journey and the behaviors and the emotions you want along the journey, you can actually start listening to the interactions to identify ways to improve people's behavior.
Yeah, I completely agree. In fact, we always talked about and worked so much around the concept of customer segmentation, Matt, and considering how much AI can help in driving personalization. At this point of time, I feel like the concepts of segmentation are almost like non-helpful because you can pretty much like create unique experiences for people in the moment. A lot of times, like we can just create what you call like the models that are needed to help in understanding what are the set of next steps that you could take with that specific customer, and you're able to actually turn it into a reality. So it's just very exciting times that we are in now.
Totally. And I'd like to pause for a second, Sujay, to share with the audience that, if you like what we're talking about now, definitely like and subscribe so you don't miss episodes like this. But also go check out past episodes with Marty Kine, who's the head of strategy for marketing and data cloud at Salesforce, and also the episode with Nitin Shire from Wevo and the episode with Ronnie Vexelman from Optimove. All of those focus on using AI to drive new approaches to microsegmentation and real-time experimentation like Sujay's talking about right now. So Sujay's in good company with those folks. Sujay, I mentioned in the intro how much fun it was to build the return on experience offering together at PwC. What aspects of ROX have you continued to build on in your work at Cortico-X, and how has your thinking evolved since our time working together at PwC?
A lot, Matt. As you know, the genesis of us putting together the concept of return on experience was to help organizations that were struggling to talk about the ROI in their experience efforts, and or making sure that they're able to continue driving rapid prioritization and reprioritization of their efforts to improve experiences. All that said and done, I feel like after moving to Cortico-X with the mission, with the mission statement of what I was talking to you about around what's best for people is what's best for an organization, I almost have taken our path to the next level where we are saying like, hey, it's a given that there is a very clear ROI in improvements of experiences, but how do we take almost like a path of what I would call activism in certain ways? And we coined this term called experience activism. The intention is that if we know that it's a no-brainer to improve the human experiences in the business decision making, why not incorporate this concept of return on experience into day-to-day decision making across the board? So we have taken this concept of return on experience and turned that into not just a service offering, a one-time thing, but actually turn it into like a discipline or a structure that actually lives and breathes within the organization to be able to drive what I would call like this experience focus across the organization at all times. And the strategic planning product that I was talking to you about becomes a cascader of a concept like that within the organization across the board.
You've taken the concept we worked on around building a cultural movement and driving organization effectiveness and figured out how to productize it.
That's exactly right.
One of the things that we often focused on together, Sujay, is, how culture is the foundation, about how, leadership, customer, employee experience come together. And that's really, the culture reinforces the way work gets done. It's, culture is how things are done around here. It's about behaviors and mindsets. And often we would anchor in on a cornerstone discipline like agility, human-centered design, quality management. And these cornerstone disciplines are really the lens at which you tackle some of the opportunities across the organization. And it creates more scale and engages more people, like you said, across the organization than just the quote unquote CX team. And a lot of what you're describing now is creating more systematic approach to how you drive those behaviors and skills into the organization to improve decision-making and the way work gets done.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like you said sometime back about even enterprise agility work that we talked about, these cornerstone disciplines are extremely important for the organizations to have, with like people at the center of it who are actually the propagators of a lot of this. I think the reality is that with particularly with like the technology really modernizing and AI coming into the picture, I think there is a very clear bias for action in certain ways within the organizations to be able to drive certain things faster. I think the discipline, which may have been more of an organizing structure back in the days, has now become like what I'd call like quality control in certain ways? Like, how do you make sure that there is like a certain standard and consistency across the entire organization? And how do we even define what is customer experience? What are the facets? What are the set of ingredients within experience, and things like that? And cornerstone disciplines are anchor in making some of that happen.
I wrote about this in my book, The CX and Culture and Connection, and you'll remember, given our work together, often talk about CX strategy and vision as if you're really making choices around better, faster, and cheaper, right? And that we would use that language sometimes around, is your strategy to be better? Is it to be faster? Is it to be cheaper? What's the long pole in the tent, right? And it's very hard to be all three equally well. And in fact, your culture aligns to that. If you really, and what you talked about a moment ago, is the companies are starting to pivot towards increased emphasis on faster. They want a fast lane with the customer. They want to improve response times. They want to be fast to market. They want to be agile. Well, so is faster more of what makes their brand promise come to life? I think, that what you're describing is a way of helping, once you know where you're going, to get the organization to adopt the discipline to work on the initiatives in the right way. Love to get your thoughts on, like, are we seeing a pivot towards faster as a dominant strategy, or do you think better and cheaper are still equally viable as a CX value proposition?
Yeah, I personally, if it's okay, I can probably take a step back on this and respond it as more like the builder of Cortico-X. And let's think about the experiences of our clients with Cortico-X itself, right? And we often have this conversation around, like, hey, what are we trying to do? Are we trying to really address a lot of opportunities that are out there in the market and do it at scale really, really fast? Or do we pick certain very specific opportunities and focus and really deliver results on that? And I think clearly there is a place for both kinds of services and products out there in the market, because there are certain people who are looking to kind of just get stuff done faster, and they know that they will, if while they are at it, they could do and drive stuff. But then there are others who are actually looking for like a complete overhaul, a complete change in the organization and how experience is perceived within the business and or beyond, right? Like, so that it goes beyond like tactical solutions that we have to create. We have very consciously picked the path of going after what I a lot of times talk about, effectiveness over efficiency. And we take any decision making and we talk about, like, hey, here is the project and that we need to kind of drive towards, how do we pivot the direction of this project to be not about like how do we fast create these experiences, but actually turn it into something which is going to stick with the clients for a long period of time. That is a living, breathing example of, like, I would say, like, as a practitioner in my own world, that I'm thinking about the client experiences.
Yeah, that makes sense. That resonates with me. I didn't mean to imply from my question that I think faster is a dominant answer. In fact, I think all three can have value, and I agree that what matters most in the experience is the emotional connection that you create with the customers and employees. And those are the peaks along the customer journey. The peaks in the journey are where it's meaningful and memorable. And it's like beyond the product, beyond the functional benefits of the product or service. And that's often better rather than faster or cheaper. So I think paying attention to, like you say, effectiveness over efficiency is important. I also think, and you and I worked on this together, where sometimes the cheaper is not that your products are lower cost, it's that you find a way to make your investments in your growth flywheel self-funding. That the way, like, when we save money on research and testing at a bank client, or we save money on, I think you were really good at that, is like finding ways to capture savings to reinvest in the growth capabilities.
No, I 100% agree. And depending on what is that dominant strategy, I think for the brands to really differentiate themselves is extremely important and needs to be very, very conscious decision.
One thing that I mentioned at the start of our podcast that I'm excited to be collaborating more, just because I enjoy working together. But um, one thing I'm looking forward to doing is we have a value accelerator at JourneySpark. People can see the value accelerator page on our website on screen now. Is we do diagnostic phases around better, faster, and cheaper, and with a strategy module, a culture module, a voice of the customer module. And what I'm really excited to do is, based on these insights, is help develop and build out these experiences working together with Cortico-X. So using the front-end diagnostic as a way to identify opportunities together that we can then, take those to scale, drive the work into the organization, and productize some of them where it makes sense. And I'm really excited to partner with my old partner to do that.
No, I'm so excited about that too, Matt. And, like it's been probably there could be like a little bit of a love fest going on here, but it's been it's been exciting to have collaborated with you for so many years, somebody who I can even call my early mentor in many which ways. So it's exciting to be collaborating with you back again here.
I see ROX as something we co-created. We were partners in it together, and we both learned from each other. And I'm excited to continue learning together in the future and learning with our clients together. So we've talked about experience activism a little bit. When I've heard you talk about it in the past, what resonates for me is how this connects to an organization's mission, vision, purpose, values, and culture, and then drives a broader connection within the organization to what you're trying to do with an experience. Is that a fair statement? That it's a way to connect it to the mission, vision, and purpose more?
Absolutely. It's also a way to almost baseline the expectations of the organization from each other, where we don't have to go out as like an organizational leader explaining why bringing in the lenses of human centricity is the way to kind of make the right set of decisions, but making that as like a given. And once you have that, then you take like that kind of a human-centric activist kind of an approach into solving for problems and thinking about like, how do I take it to the next level and connect it back to value, so that not to prove the value, but to prioritize and reprioritize the effort and not lose focus.
A lot of times where things break down, despite the best intentions, are when the customer experience strategy is not clearly linked to the overall mission, vision, and purpose. And you continue, one opportunity is to create more clarity on how disparate CX investments that may feel like false starts and lots of like misaligned investments across the enterprise and different functions that may be working in silos. How do you make sure you ladder up and make sure you have a more coherent connection to the mission, vision, and purpose of the organization? This sounds like a way to reinforce that. And then another opportunity where things break down is that while there's clarity on the mission, vision, and purpose, and then the values of the organization, those don't get translated through to clear cultural behaviors. And so what ends up happening is you end up fighting your culture at the organization. And unless you actually drive behaviors and that those reinforce behavior adoption, nothing actually happens in the organization. So what we were talking about earlier in the conversation is how to scale behavior adoption in the organization.
That's exactly right. And that's where I think some of the cornerstone disciplines that you were talking about, Matt, like that helps in scaling and making sure that we are doing it with like a similar sort of mindset across the entire.
One thing we've done with our Value Accelerator, Sujay, is we've actually got a library of behaviors that map to the cornerstone disciplines and also map to the strategies for better, faster, and cheaper. So when a company creates clarity on, hey, I'm more on faster than on cheaper, or I'm more on better than on faster, and I want to focus on agility, bam, here's the 20 behaviors to focus on, right? Or if I want to focus on faster and agility, here's the 15 behaviors to focus on. And that's a starting point to start refining and making them tailored to your business and drive them in. I think if you do this in the context of experience activism, it'll create a lot more emotional connection of the people in the organization to why you're doing this and what are the right behaviors for your purpose.
Yeah, I completely agree. Bringing in that as like a very clear lens into how the business decision making happens will help in cascading and making some of these aspects of behaviors a lot more real in terms of how they are tangibly driving value, and even knowing consciously would help in celebrating some of these behaviors too, which would help in like driving the value that we are talking about.
And you really were at the early forefront of adapting approaches for customer listening. In fact, the backstory on how ROX was created together is Sujay and I were working together at a Blue Cross Blue Shield client. And Sujay was leading the work stream on modernizing their approach to customer listening. And I was working on culture around how do we create an I've got it culture at a think of an insurance company wanting to create an I've got it culture, which is very different. This was sponsored by the CMO and the head of strategy. And Sujay and I were working together where he helped evolve the approach to customer listening to be more aligned to the culture and the vision that we were helping build for CX, and put in place an approach that was more systems thinking approach to measurement than a single golden metric. So it's not that you can't have NPS or CSAT or customer effort score as a ingredient in your recipe and your system of metrics, but it's broader. How has your thinking about measurement evolved as you've continued to work at Cortico-X about their system of metrics and how to use the modern tools to align to what you're doing?
Absolutely. I'm listening. What you just said, the definition of listening has evolved. Matt, I mean, could you jog down my memories back in the days, like more than a decade back when we were working on something like this? We had to go out and solicit input from their members of this healthcare payer that you're talking about, Matt. Our entire strategy was around like, how do you listen to the customers better by soliciting input about their experiences at different touch points across the board. I feel a lot of that has evolved now, where there are technologies that can observe a lot of these behaviors and listen to these customers without even asking. So some of that data that has got a lot more sophisticated in some ways in through observations has taken this efficacy of some of the systems of metrics to the next level. And there is a lot more data at scale, right? Like years back when we were doing it, we had to work with what people shared with us as their experiences, which is still pretty important. But I think now we can do this, what we were talking a moment back around the segment of one, micro segmentation, or even ditching the word segment altogether and talking about customer as a customer. I think a lot of that is possible today because we can listen to an individual customer as like, and then act on how and what do we do to kind of improve that.
We have better tools with the ability to use AI to mine unstructured data conversations. It's not just the call center or the social media, but now there's messaging like, how is your stay going at a hotel? So the experience from booking to checkout includes lots of touch points that can now use messaging as opposed to surveys at the end. And as a result, those conversations are both an experience and a source of measurement because you're mining the conversation.
Yeah, I would agree. And if I can add one more thing, Matt, like yesterday, literally that's the same life sciences client that we were working on, we came to a point where we were talking about, you know what, do we even need a dashboard anymore, right? Because we get data, we get insights, and insights should turn into action. So what if we skip this entire step in between, which is around like the data to turn things into insights? What if we observe the data and we take actions? And
you're democratizing insights and driving action in a more decentralized, federated way. Rather than like the dashboards can be useful, but it's like paving the cow path. You're doing it the old way.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Sujay, I really have enjoyed our conversation. Do you have any other words of wisdom to share with CX leaders as they go out on their journey as like closing thoughts?
No, absolutely. I mean, I would just say that consider yourself lucky that we are living this era where we started Matt like more than a decade and a half back, or like definitely I started a decade and a half back. You went. It's just an interesting opportunity for the CX leaders to take some of this emerging technologies and this whole wave of AI to the next level and bring experiences into reality versus making a case for creating those experiences. So a huge opportunity.
Thank you for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate your sharing your thoughts, and you've definitely sparked ideas for me. I'm sure you have for the audience. And my offer to the audience that I'll make together with Sujay is, if this is something where you want to have a conversation to follow up, we're happy to talk to you together, or feel free to reach for Sujay directly. And we're really looking forward to continuing the dialogue with you about anything we talked about today that sparked your interest.
Thank you so much, Matt, for having me on the show. And it's always exciting to kind of talk, and using a platform like this to cascade our collective thoughts together is always fun. Thank you.
Looking forward to having great impact together in the future, and having fun together.